And I'm joined this afternoon again by Wilson Uche, who is a travel consultant. Thank you,
My
Mr.
pleasure.
Uche, for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
So, and the governor is still speaking somewhere, I think at the other wing of the terminal. I think he's now at the terminal 2 or 1. I don't know which one.
This should be the one.
The terminal.
Because
so
he actually unveiled.
So the pictures are not steady. So we'll continue the discussion in the studio as they sort that out. So just tell us, from everything you've seen so far, what do you think this is going to bring for Enugu State?
One thing, I think it's very commendable in the sense that we now see a situation whereby you see a governor. I'm not saying that other governors didn't follow their manifesto, but you can see that he's strictly following those promises he made before election. Of course, he's taking it one after the other. Of course, earlier on, we saw a situation whereby he unveiled the Enugu Air. This is actually part of the integrated transport system that he is launching today.
So, Mr. Chair, let's get your thoughts on this, really.
Yeah, earlier on, I was actually at the unveiling ground, and you could literally see excitement in the faces of people. Now we are talking about developmental projects being seen the way it is. Most of us who have had opportunity of traveling maybe outside the state or outside the country, see how organized the system is. So now we're beginning to experience those things here where we are, because of course this is now going to have an effect on every other aspect of the economy. One thing is that if you actually want to have a very good organized city, organized transport system is one of the things that ought to be there. And now this is going to also now, you see a situation whereby it will address certain issues of insecurity, because now for us to go through one point to another, of course, your details are given, and then you will also be monitored from one point to another. We are not going to be seeing a situation whereby there's a chaotic system. Now everything is going to be organized. Of course, before you board a bus, you would have loaded your card or paid for your ticket. That means your data is going in. We can now have an organized way of determining who is traveling and who is not traveling. And I think this is well commendable.
Very commendable. And how do you think this connects now? Being a travel consultant, the governor also referenced during his speech that the Enugu airport has been concessioned.
Yes.
So how do you think all this connects in the value chain of transport?
One thing I keep telling everybody is that government doesn't have any reason being in business. There are people who are actually made to do the business. So theirs is to govern, theirs is to churn out policies, theirs is to ensure that things are moving on the way it should. And in this case, we are seeing concessioning the airport is a good decision in the right direction, because now you no longer see a situation whereby people take it like this is government work. This is no longer government work, this is business. And now people are going to handle it like business. And everything is going to keep improving. Because when people go into business, especially people who are actually trained to do the business thing, they also do it as business and grow the business. Because the essence of business is for profitability, for growth, for advancement, and all of that. Then coming now to Enugu, of course, I believe that what we have, the integrated transport system, if possible, should be concessioned, so that professionals who have the right wherewithal to run the transport system will be able to do the same. And with that, we also ensure that government will now focus on other things. They wouldn't now bother themselves about how would our transport system work. So these things will be handled by individuals who are professionals in it. And it's a very good thing that is happening. Now, for us, you see that, like I mentioned before, it is now easier for us to plan and determine to a certain level how many persons are coming into Enugu, because the system is already integrated. Now, when you are moving, somebody will be able to determine, okay, at this point in time, this person was seen at this place, the other person was seen at this place. So in an organized setting, which of course Enugu is growing into, we are going to begin to see a whole lot of things, a whole lot of development coming in. And then investors who would want to come and invest in the state, there are certain things they look out to see. One is an organized system like we have seen.
So is this a good time to visit Enugu?
There's no better time to visit Enugu if not now. Because of course, like I mentioned earlier, not just visiting Enugu, but investing in Enugu. Now this is the right time to invest in Enugu. A whole lot is happening. And before you know it, things will start happening all around. So there's no better time to not just visit Enugu, but to also to invest in Enugu, because I think not when you come to visit, the tendency is that you leave or you go after visiting, but would want this city to keep expanding, things to keep improving, and then being able to, for the city to be livable for anyone who would want to live here.
For the city to be livable. So let's talk about adaptability. A lot of our people are, some of these people are used to entering buses in a certain way, all those small buses and keke.
Yeah.
And now the comfort level has been upgraded. You come in, you sit in a nice air-conditioned CNG bus, moving the city from just a city to a mega city. How do you think our people will adapt to this? Okay,
let's also come from the point where it now makes the transportation system to be cheaper than it used to be. Now it will be well regulated. Nobody is expecting unnecessary inflation of prices. Because of course, whenever there is this short flow of fuel and then or increase in price, you now see the price will just jump from one point to another. But because it's an organized system, things will now have to flow the way it should. Again, we also, like you asked, people are used to doing things. But one thing that is inevitable, change is inevitable. And it's good that when the world is evolving, our people would also be led to evolve as well. Because the truth about it is that we've seen a situation whereby people travel abroad, and when they get to the airport and they see how beautiful the place is, sometimes people break down to cry. What have I been doing in darkness? What is Africa all about? But now we are seeing a situation whereby our infrastructures can actually be matched, if not be measured like what we see abroad. So I think it's a very commendable situation that we have here. The only thing is that people will need to come up. Our people will need to adapt to the change that we have seen ourselves in. And that is just in a while. Of course, between now and the next 1 year, people will get used to the whole system. If you used to miss your bus, now you have to catch up the bus quite on time. I remember that when people travel to UK, maybe some of us that go to UK, and then you say the bus is meant to be at your station at 7:30 on the dot. If you actually stay 7:35, you will miss the bus. So it will also help normalize the way we approach things, being on time, doing things the right way, and then having an organized system. And that is exactly what this is going to offer us.
So, I mean, this is what is going to offer Enugu. And when you also look at the other aspects of this, the perception about a city that is trying to change the culture, how people move around. So do you think now that there's need for some enlightenment campaign on this?
Extremely. In short, obviously we need to now begin to, that's from the communication angle of the government, to now begin to enlighten people on how to go about these things. And that's the orientation, the office that handles public orientation. And I think they need to do more work this time around, because there was something you mentioned while we were having our private discussion, how people now still want to do things, defecate where they are not supposed to defecate, go to places where they are not supposed to, even the buses park along the road. Now you see it is just a chaotic situation that we used to have. But this time around, people need to also be briefed, well informed about the situation and how to go about things. Okay, from one point to another, like when you get to the airport, then announcement is made in English, is made in broken language, that's pidgin English, and then somebody now speaking in Igbo, so that if you are not well tutored to understand English language, you'll be able to hear it in your local language. I also expect that the orientation department will also, some of these announcements will be broken down into our local languages.
Breaking it to our local languages. So let's talk about people who say that the bus terminals are not necessary, that the CNG buses are not necessary. Help us put that in perspective.
I used to ask somebody I used to ask people this question: how can you on earth say that development is not necessary? It takes somebody who would want to remain in the dark to make such statements. Of course, if we are beginning to weigh it side by side with other things that should have been done, when is it right to do it? When is it right for us to have an advanced transportation system? If not now. The fact remains that Enugu is evolving. A whole lot of people are coming into Enugu. People would want to invest in Enugu, and they can't do that if the environment is not conducive for such investment to come. So I keep telling them that all of these things, like the word says, it says integrated. It is not only bus terminal. Every other things are going, development in all sides. So anyone that is not touched at this point in time will definitely be touched as time goes on. But of course, we take it bit by bit, bit by bit. They said a journey of 100 miles starts with one step. And this is one of the steps.
Absolutely. It starts with one step. So this is something that when you look at the way this has been deployed, do you think that maybe there will be other components of transportation coming in the mix?
Yes, actually, from what I have been able to, some information I've been able to get concerning this integrated transport system, it's broken down into several aspects. And one has to do with, of course, the transportation infrastructure project, which has to do with provision of organized park, which is bus terminals and all of that, integrated bus terminals and all of that. And then moving on to something like a mass transit system, which also includes BRT and all of that. Then the other one, they also talked about the rail system that is also going to be integrated into it. They are all designed to actually factor in these things I mentioned. And then, of course, when you see these things happening, it's going to improve a whole lot about how we move, how you come into Enugu, and then organize it in a way that we know, like I mentioned earlier, who is coming into Enugu. Okay, can we give a data of how many persons that actually entered into Enugu? Before now, we wouldn't be able to get that, except when we go to maybe some of these bus terminals, which of course, you see that they are not properly organized to give us such feedback. So it will also help in planning. We'll be able to determine, okay, in certain weekends, are we always having the influx of people into Enugu at what point? That also feeds us with such data and then help us in planning and also getting these things done. So I believe that as time goes, I am not speaking for the government, but I know that in the whole plan, these things are supposed to be put in place as time goes on.
That's good. Also, now that you've said that, the people, well, I said before that maybe there's need to enlighten them on how this is used. I haven't seen any video, any tutorial on how to board the Enugu CNG bus because our people are used to handing out cash.
Sure.
So I'm revisiting that again. Is it possible that they have to create something, maybe a campaign, to let people know that there is a new way of moving in town?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, the department that is meant to reorientate the society ought to have started doing that. In short, highlighting the benefits of these projects. Because, of course, like you mentioned, you asked, there are certain part of people that feels that this is elitist. Why are we having to do this when people are hungry? We see a certain quarter of persons saying that. But then beyond just having these things improve, our transport system improve, we also need to understand that our revenue system, like the way people approach payment, needs to also improve. So at this point in time, when we talk about an organized system like this, the payment system, the revenue generation, You will not now see people now having to hand out cash and then eventually it doesn't get to government. They would also be able to determine to what extent we can generate revenue. From the system, you'll be able to know exactly what has been generated, what goes into the government coffers and what goes to the partners' coffers as well. So I think it's an organized way of doing things.
Very organized. And so where do you think, I mean, now that the transport terminal has been launched, on to the next one. What do you think the government should focus on next?
For me, there's so much to be done because eventually when you bring such infrastructure, there's also need for maintenance. You need to also maintain those facilities. So, and like I mentioned, it's no longer now within the government purview to now begin to maintain those because it has been handed over to a system that manages itself. I believe that we would highlight on how people go about transportation. Like you mentioned, people need to know what to do when they get to what point. And those things need to be highlighted from time to time. There has to be a mass public enlightenment on how to go about this, the benefits. Why do we have to take this direction? And then what is next? I think to a large extent, people who handle government communication need to do more. Like you mentioned before, even the launch, people should have been well tutored on how to go about it. Because immediately it is launched, nobody is expecting us to, in the 1 month time, not to have started. Immediately it is launched, people need to take advantage of the new system. And that is what we would have actually carried people into. That is what we should have done. So we expect that we use all communication means, the social media, the media like the media like Afia TV, come to talk to people on how best. Let there be jingles. Even there should be public address system where you move around and also enlighten. It's what I'm expecting that happens from now.
We'll take a break. Hopefully when we return, the contingent that is headed to Nsukka will have gotten there. And of course, we'll see the commissioning of the Nsukka bus terminal. And of course, Orji Nwachukwu will be here anchoring the proceedings. My name is Alex Obodo. Thank you so much. Wilson Uche, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been
Travel
a pleasure.
consultant, thank you for talking to us on the special transmission. My name is Alex Obodo. Good afternoon.